All right, well, we're going to move on next to Jodi Korich. Jodi is a clinical assistant professor and the director of the Center for Educational Technologies at Texas A&M University College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. The center employs 7 full-time faculty and staff dedicated to researching and developing innovative educational resources. So Jodi, I'm going to turn things over to you when you're ready.
Okay, good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I've been asked to talk a little bit about some work that we've been doing on case studies at Texas A&M. We've spent about the last year and a half exploring how to develop case studies and how to implement them into the curriculum, so I'll give you some highlights of our work here. Okay, first I want to talk a little bit about how this kind of fits into the big picture here at Texas A&M. Not sure, okay. And we've just undergone a process of curricular review, and we're working on some curricular redesign, and we see case studies as one piece of this larger area of emphasis. So like many schools, I suspect, we're looking to shift from an instructor-centered to a student-centered curriculum. And for those who might not be familiar with that terminology, in essence what we're trying to do is develop curricular activities and experiential learning opportunities that allow students to get more engaged with their learning as opposed to passively sitting back and learning. And so we see case studies as being a fundamental part of that process. So if we look at kind of the pillars of learning, there are a number of different types of educational modalities that are receiving a lot of emphasis right now, and a lot of validated literature that we can draw from. Some of the areas that we're particularly interested in are sort of represented on this slide, and we've observed that case studies can play a role in each and every one of these. So the opportunity to implement more interactivity into lectures and get students engaged and involved in discussions. You know, it turns out that case studies are a really good mechanism to do that. And toward the end of this overview, I'll show you how we're doing that in our cardiology class in just a couple weeks. But also case studies can be used to support flipped classroom, and that's a modality where students receive the didactic information before class, and then in class, rather than lecturing at them, you use that opportunity for one-on-one interactions to hold discussions and kind of drill deeper into the subject matter. Case studies are obviously experiential in nature, and they can be used for blended learning where you're combining online learning with face-to-face learning, and some great examples of being able to implement case studies into team-based learning where the students divide into groups and work on the cases as problem-solving activities. So because we see case studies as being very flexible modalities to teach, it seemed like a really logical place for us to place some emphasis. So what we did is we started by developing a series of case studies in internal medicine. And we chose hyperadrenocorticism because it is complicated. There's a lot of information that the students have to assimilate, pull together, and apply in order to be able to successfully diagnose and manage patients with HAC. And so we developed a series of 3 case studies that really helped students be able to do that. And our observations were that it seemed like a very successful way to foster clinical reasoning skills in students. The students really liked it. It definitely appealed to them. They felt that they could see immediate, obvious applications to what they were doing. And then we also observed that it seemed to help with retention and integration of information. So we thought all of that was very positive, but where we thought there were some areas of improvement is the process that we used to develop the case studies. And what we were doing in the early days is kind of developing them with the existing tool set. So using things like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint to try to author the case material, and then hand building the case screens using Flash. And that had a number of limitations. It was sort of tedious, and the tools really weren't helping us gain efficiencies. And so we, of course, looked at what case building applications are out there, both commercial and open source. And at the time, at least, we didn't feel that any of them really met all of our needs. So our needs assessment were that we were looking for something that would be web-based, so that faculty could use it anytime, anywhere, that we could work very collaboratively with them, because one of the things that we do here at the Center for Educational Technologies is that we work with the faculty providing instructional design support in addition to multimedia build-out. And so we wanted a tool that would allow us to be able to work collaboratively with faculty back and forth without forcing them to have to come over to our office and meet with us. We also wanted the tool to be able to function autonomously so that faculty could work on it when they're free, which is often not during standard business hours, so something that they could work on in evenings and weekends. We wanted it to be flexible, which knocked a lot of the commercial products out of the market, because what happens is that they follow the standard history, signalment, diagnosis, treatment format, but we really wanted to be able to develop case studies in all areas of the curricula. So we might want to look at something on a herd health level, for instance, and we found that a lot of the commercial products, which are really adapted from human medical education, just didn't allow for that flexibility. We also wanted something that had a case mapping tool, something that allowed us to be able to support complex branching, and there really wasn't, at that time at least, anything out there that was going to meet our needs. It was also very important that we be able to implement it into our Moodle learning management system so we could assign the cases to students and track their progress. And of course, we, like everyone, wanted it to be inexpensive to operate. So we didn't want to have high overhead with annual license fees that we had to come up with year in and year out. So with that in mind, we kind of took the brave step and plunged into the pool and decided to build our own web-based application. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that process. Really, it's kind of a three-pronged approach. The three pieces of this platform are what we call the Case Authoring Tool, or CAT for short. And you can see it has a mapping tool here, so these are different nodes that represent different screens that might appear in the case depending on the pathway the student goes down. There's also the player, which is the output of the case. This is how the student experiences the case. And we started building it initially in Flash. We're in the process now of moving over to an HTML player that will support mobile device, so we'll be able to run this on tablet devices, for instance. The third piece of this is the integration into the Moodle learning management system. So that's what we've been focusing on over the last few months. We have the technology pretty well pinned down and things are working quite nicely. And so we're shifting our focus now onto the curricular implementation. And just briefly, there's three projects that I want to highlight that I think show the flexibility of how these case studies can be used for teaching. So we're working on a project with Dr. Ashley Saunders, our cardiologist here at Texas A&M, on a team-based learning application for case studies. So we have 3 case studies that focus around the presentation of the coughing dog. And for 3 days, 2 hours per day, the students will get together during class time, divided into groups, so 6 students per group, and they will work on those case studies as a team. But it's an interactive kind of experience, not only with the group, but with Dr. Saunders herself. So we sort of pace their way through it and use each question as an opportunity to pause, let the students deliberate within their teams, present their answers, defend their answers, and then kind of wrap it up with a little mini lecture. So our first try at this is actually going to take place in about a week and a half, and we'll be collecting a lot of data and feedback from the students, and we'll kind of see how that goes. And I think that's a really interesting application for case studies. Another way that we're looking to apply case studies in the curriculum is what I'm calling the interactive lecture. So rather than the traditional PowerPoint lecture standing up and kind of talking at the students where the students are passive participants, we're going to use a case study in public health that we're developing on a salmonella outbreak in a dairy farm to develop an interactive 1-hour lecture where the students are working with the faculty to kind of solve the case in real time. Another way that we've been applying case studies that I think has been successful is using them in clinical rotations, which might not be the first way that you think about applying these, but working with Dr. Audrey Cook here in internal medicine, you know, cases are hit and miss. It's very hard to control caseload, and when you have something like hyperadrenocorticism in dogs, you want to make sure that every student, regardless of what cases they saw during that 2-week rotation has a basic working knowledge and aptitude for managing these cases. So she's using them very successfully in a rounds type setting to make sure that every student has that fundamental information regardless of the caseload. So those are just 3 highlights of how case studies can be used to teach. In terms of where we're going with this, what our vision is that we'd like to create a bank of case studies, and we'd like to do this collaboratively with the other veterinary colleges. We've already completed 9 of these, and we have 20 more in development. So we're getting quite good at building these out very efficiently and cost effectively. And I think we're at the point now where we'd like to find some partners who are interested in working on this with us and develop a kind of a collaborative platform for being able to contribute and share these amongst the vet schools. We're also going to be continuing to experiment with different implementation methods to collect the data to help us refine the implementation, and we'll be looking to publish that so we can share our successes and our failures with everyone else so we don't all have to keep reinventing the wheel. Couple quick acknowledgments. This work was really made possible through support from the Veritas program, which is in partnership with Zoetis and Cornell University, and they've really been instrumental in helping us with this and other projects that we're working on. And I'll be happy to take any questions, but if anybody would like to see an example of a working case study, we've put one online that anybody can log on. And if I think that you'll be able to have an opportunity to pull up this lecture and grab this URL later, but if not, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send you the link. Thanks so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. Do we have support structure in place? Yes, that's a great question. In fact, that's one of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on. We have 3 faculty full-time in our program here at the Center for Educational Technologies, and part of what we do is provide instructional design support to help the faculty walk through every step of the process, and I think that's been very successful. We've found with faculty who have authored more than 1 case now that many times once they do 1 or 2, they're off and running and need very little input, but it's very important for the first case to have someone help you. How closely aligned with I think the question here is regarding the LMS. The question might relate to, do you need to be running on our LMS? If that is the question, like right now we are hosting content for 5 other vet schools on our learning management system, and we're doing it in a really collaborative way that's been very successful. There are some new interesting technologies, LTI technology down the road, that we are actively looking at that, as I understand it, would allow the faculty from other schools to use this information through their own local LMS and assign it in a system that they're probably comfortable and accustomed to using. So stay tuned on that. That's a major area of emphasis for us in the next few months. So Dan's question about integrating with other LMSs, you know, the way this is being designed, we hope that it will be integrating with other LMSs.